Robert O Sullivan.
Hi, my name is Robert O Sullivan. I live and I have been in Brookings since 2015. I'm a former high school civics and history teacher, social studies, and also an English teacher. And I was also a part-time pastor. And I think all three of these roles, two hats and a collar, you might think of them as, are really appropriate tonight. Number one, this council made a huge mistake a year ago, or last year, let's put it. And that is somebody didn't do their homework. Because there's some really basic things that should have made someone say, hey, wait, we can't do this. And the reason you couldn't do that is there's a U.S. Constitution, which has in its First Amendment things that are guaranteed. And one thing we must recognize about our history is that our liberty somewhat is based on government staying out of things. And the First Amendment is exactly all about that. It's saying government should not be restricting speech, press, freedom of speech, assembly, redress of grievances, and religion and the practice thereof. Now, that is a right that protects people in their liberty from government doing things that they shouldn't be doing. The Oregon Constitution is even clearer. I read it, Section 2 of Article 1. All men shall be secure in the natural light to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their consciences. And then, no law shall in any case whatever control the free exercise and enjoyment of religious opinions or interfere with the rights of conscience. That's clear. As a teacher, an English teacher, I would say, don't use superfluous words, extra words, unless you really want to emphasize something. I read those words once again. No law shall in any case whatever control the free exercise and enjoyment of religion. Now maybe the whatever doesn't belong, but how much clearer can it be? And I don't know what went into your making the decisions you made last year, but you should be aware that government shouldn't do certain things, and it certainly shouldn't be a planning committee. What competence do they have that? We shouldn't be considering this. You have no right to tell churches what their ministry should be. That's protected by the U.S. Constitution and by the Oregon Constitution even more clearly. Beyond that, there's a law passed unanimously by both houses of Congress in the year 2000 that clearly says that there must be a compelling government interest that cannot be reached by any other means for governments to mess around with people's religious beliefs and practice. Now, a little background on how that law came about. There were lots of things like this that were happening. Neighbors complained about what was going on in the church. There were also issues of eminent domain all over the land. I remember in Los Angeles that a church that I went to school in was destroyed so the freeway system could be built. And Congress was tired of hearing all these complaints about how churches were being harassed by government, and they shouldn't be. So they passed this unanimously. Can you imagine that? No one objected, and what it says is you have to have that compelling state interest. You don't have it, and it's very, very clear that of all places, the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission is not the place to do it. They don't even know how to use a dictionary. The dictionaries that they cite have many definitions of what a church is, and that's no basis to hurt the capacity of religion to function I think St. Tim's has been very brave in this community, and I think you made a bad mistake last year, but this one is much worse, because there you're talking about just food. Here you're talking about the entire ministry of every church in town.
More speakers. Robert O Sullivan, you put down here G1 and G5. Would you prefer to wait? Would you prefer to address those now, or would you prefer to wait until we get to those in the agenda? Right now? Yes. Please state your name and address.
My name is Robert O Sullivan. I live in Brookings, and I have spoken to you before, and also the Planning Commission. And what's strange about all this, and my background, as you might remember, is a high school social studies teacher, as well as an English teacher, and a Lutheran pastor. And my feeling strange about all this is some things are not in the bailiwick of a city council, or especially a city planning commission. Now, in the process of thinking about what I want to say tonight, I looked up the word bailiwick, and found out that it goes back to medieval times in England, and it had to do with who was a bailiff or the sheriff of a town, and their bailiwick was the place where they had the authority. Well, this city council does not have the authority to regulate what goes on in a church in terms of its ministry. The other day, or the last time people were before you on this very subject, you saw someone named Sister Cora Rose. Who better could provide Christian ministry to people trying to get on their feet than someone who has deep roots in this community, but also went off to school, went to college, went to law school, went to seminary. She's an ordained deacon in a Lutheran church, and she also is a legal aid attorney. She's helping people. She's helping people at a church that has made many of us very proud of how it has reached out to people who are in need. It is not within the council's bailiwick, or is it within the bailiwick of the Planning Commission to try and say, well, we should decide who should be in ministry at this place, what they're doing in that ministry, what hours they have. That's none of the business of this council. And it's really unfortunate that you waste so much time and effort on something that just is not in your bailiwick. Now, the issue before you suggests that the feeding at churches be allowed maybe to increase to 3 rather than 2. Now, this whole scheme is unconstitutional, defies the U.S. Constitution, defies federal legislation, and here you're acting like you're moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. You're going to lose in the courts, or if you have sense to recognize that you made a big mistake, and I know 2 of you were not involved in this. I shouldn't quite say it that way. But you should cut your losses, or the people's losses. They're going to be paying for this if you have a lawsuit that goes on for another 2-3 years. Please, you're out of your bailiwick. You should not be doing this, and it's time that you recognize the best thing you could do is not to amend that ordinance, but simply to end it, simply to drop it. It's not your business.
Thank you.
Following up tonight, a dispute between the City of Brookings and St. Timothy's Church continues as City Council members vote to uphold the abatement against the church. New council members Clayton Malmberg and Phoebe Parita, as well as new mayor Isaac Hodges, took part in their first regular meeting on Monday. In a 4-0 vote, with only Parita abstaining, the council denied St. Timothy's appeal and are moving forward with the abatement to stop part of the church's services, including limiting how often it can provide meals to the community. The vote came after several community members gave emotional testimony about how the council has reacted to complaints about St. Timothy's outreach.
The St. Tim's thing, you know, I mean, I don't know what to say. The entity that's doing the most to try and help the very downtrodden in town, and it's like the city just wants to kick them and beat up on them, and I just can't wrap my head around it.
Not allowing people's religious rights to be respected, and this is much bigger than this. That was only about feeding. This is about the entire ministry of churches. That's not in your jurisdiction or in your bailiwick, and it's none of your business.
You might recall earlier this year, the church filed a lawsuit against the city, even demanding a trial in federal court. In response, the United States Justice Department asked the federal judge to rule in St. Timothy's favor. Coming up tonight on NBC 5 News at 11, we'll hear more from the city council meeting, including how new mayor Isaac Hodges is addressing his criminal history in a story NBC 5 News broke last week.
My name is Robert O Sullivan. I'm the Brookings. I've lived here since 2015. I'm a retired pastor and a retired high school teacher. Like Father Bernie, I was bivocational. And my church was in a somewhat different context. It was on a main drag between Oakland and Berkeley. And if you think you get crazies in Brookings who come here for whatever reasons, imagine what that might be. But we were a small congregation with a part-time pastor, and we reached out to the poor because that's what the Christian faith is all about. If you doubt that, I suggest you read Matthew 25 quickly, where Jesus reminded people that when you reach out to the poor, to the naked, to the homeless, to the hungry, to the stranger, you are reaching out in love and compassion to Jesus. And I admire so much what St. Tim's has done in this community that I came here to say, don't think of the church simply as a building where they have worship in it. That's not what it's all about. It's about responding to God's love with compassion to others. And St. Timothy's has done this in a way that should make us all proud, and they should not be harassed as they have been in this community for doing what should be done. You're probably all familiar with the phrase, let justice flow down like waters and righteousness like a mighty flowing stream. That's from the book of Amos, and it's on the grave of Martin Luther King, and it's something that compels many Christians to work for justice and peace throughout the world. Just before that in the book of Amos are some other words. And Amos is reflecting God's will by saying, I delight not in the noise of solemn assembly. But what God really is concerned about is reaching out to the poor and the homeless and those in great need. Please, please support a brave and courageous congregation.